2018 Faker was an unkillable demon king of League and the undisputed GOAT, and he already won 3 world championships. He was the best, and everyone knew it, even if he was going through a tough time. But it was here, amidst Faker's lowest point, that a shining star rose in the LCK. A player so mechanically skilled that all who saw him play could only stare with their mouths wide open. A player who excelled at everything that made Faker who he was. The David to Faker's Goliath. Chovy. A player as good as the best in the world and a rivalry that shaped the LCK and all of League. Yet, despite all of Chovy's skill, he still struggles to surpass the shadow of Faker. Like Icarus, he flies so close to the sun, but his wings fail him when he needs them most. This is the story of the rivalry between the unkillable Demon King and the patron saint of the Church of Chovy. T1 and Faker had suffered a devastating loss in 2017, the loss that would turn the next 6 years into the dark ages for both the team and Faker himself. They had only one way to redeem themselves, and that was to make it to Worlds again in 2018. It wasn't his first rodeo. Faker had made this exact same climb hundreds of times before. However, for someone else in the league, it was his first rodeo. Chovy had come into professional play just that year and was largely inexperienced, but it was that year that he would make a name for himself. While Faker and SKT missed the playoffs, Chovy made it all the way to the finals with his team Griffin, just coming shy of making it to Worlds. The very same year Faker seemed to have cemented himself as a fading legend, Chovy rose to the mantle of a rising star. He was the MVP of the summer split and became the first player in the LCK to break 100 KDA. But it wasn't till 2019 that they would face off in earnest. They would meet in the finals of the LCK Spring Split, and it was a match that everyone thought was a done deal. Faker much past his prime and the rising star of the Rift. We were all ready for Chovy to dethrone his idol and take his rightful place as the new king. But what we saw shocked us all. Griffin and Chovy didn't just lose, they were absolutely stomped out with a clean 3-0 sweep.
She's going to get further and further ahead, and Turret is going to go towards that threshold of Griffin is going to lose their advantage of the mid-range type of team composition. Their champions are going to taper off.
The enemy team does this. The first thought is, how can we mitigate a loss?
Take a look at what's going on the screen. Faker and SKT,
they don't need any more advantages.
And you know what will be the worst possible decision? Eyes up, just watch this play.
Oh, Teddy went into the one-on-one, and they're able to bait Tarzan into this. The arrow going to do nothing, but here comes Chovy from the left side. Tarzan able to do a nice amount of damage, but it doesn't matter. Griffin, they lost their... Trying to get in there, but they're not close enough. The smite's going to come down. And SKT, they just solidified their mid-game, and they're ahead. This one, the 1-3-1, so strong, especially with the Fed solo lane.
The 2, which we kind of expected we might see when the Elise was locked in. We'd be talking about how we might have this year.
Where on the map, the Jace, the Renekton, and the Elise all enjoying leads. Feeling pretty good, would be wrong, but as of right now, SKT
really does feel like completed items versus thrift shopping as Tarzan trying to make something happen desperately.
And he is going to actually get the fight started here. Glid is going to go down, but his 4 members. One would be wrong, but as of right now, SKT
really does feel like completed items versus thrift shopping as Tarzan trying to make something happen desperately.
And he is going to actually get the fight started here. Glid is going to go down, but his 4 members. As Teddy is able to set that one up with the red buff, even though
Despite all of Chovy's skill and all his talent, he ended up with nothing to show for it, earning him the title that would haunt him for years to come. Choky. He would come so close to victory, but always choked when it mattered most. This trend would continue for most of Chovy's career. While Faker would be fighting tooth and nail to claw his way out of the downward spiral he was in, Chovy would absolutely dominate until it mattered most. This curse followed him even after he left Griffin. In DRX, he would fail to win again, being obliterated by T1 in the spring season.
As now DRX decide to pull the trigger, the on-on comes back, they do. Get the knockdown as there's the bait's called, but the Gragas just explodes. I'm not even sure how. He died so fast. The Taric is going to fall, but now that's only a 1-for-1 as DRX is being collapsed on. This is the fight that T1 wanted as Chovy is so incredibly low. The set falls down. Depth is still alive though as Faker. He's wandering around. He's not able to get there. Oh my goodness.
because that dragon just carried T1 to victory in this team fight. It basically said everyone will not die. And I have no idea. Wall wins the smite fight, and then a 5-man Elder Dragon execution with a bot wave in good proximity to just run up bot lane and end.
All right. Well, we'll see whether that can happen. Don't know. I mean, I think if that happens, right, you're correct. The likelihood is probably very low, as there's the dredge line. It's going to land, but it's onto the Olaf, not necessarily the priority target. Or is it? As Faker almost melts him, as Doran in the backline does absolutely nothing. He can't really affect this game anymore, as Chovy trying to offer the CC, trying to offer the damage, but he just can't. DRX, there's just nothing left in the tank of this composition. As the final chapter is exactly that for DRX in this series. It will be the 2-0 for T1, and just like round 1, they'll be able to topple Dragon X.
And choked again in the finals of the same summer against Damwon Gaming, losing 3-0. Chovy would then find a different team to back him up by moving to Hanwha Life, but it was more of the same. Chovy was amazing, and everything we knew about him was true. He was unreasonably mechanically skilled, praised by everyone. He was so good that he literally gave Dopa an existential crisis. Yet, he was never the champion that we all felt and knew that he should have been. Why was this? What really caused Choki to surface when it mattered most? I think Perks says it best here.
If you ever watch Chovy's pro view, like, this guy doesn't even like press F key once in like 10 minutes. He's literally like locked camera on his lane, you know? And that's why he's so fucking good at it as well. Because he's really focused on one thing. And I think last year was like a prime like TP mid meta, like Ryze, Sylas, DF, LeBlanc. Like if something is happening on sideline, you want to be aware of it and you want to make plans to make TP plays on sideline.
Chovy is an amazing mid laner. In lane, he's almost undoubtedly better than Faker currently, but he lacks the ability to push a team to new heights. While he was the king of the lane, Faker was and is one of the most effective roamers we've seen. And winning your lane doesn't just guarantee you win the game at the highest level, or at any level really. So Chovy failed at what Faker excelled at. We've all had games where we were super dominant in lane but still lost because of some random factor. That's all Choki was. We were so spoiled by Faker that we equated incredible mechanical skill with immense game sense and map awareness. Chovy was simply proof that those weren't the same. The title of Choki was less about Chovy and more about the man whose shadow he seemed unable to escape, Faker. While Chovy moved from team to team trying to find the one where his magic would finally shine, Faker stayed with T1 and went on to win 3 LCK titles back-to-back from the spring of 2019 to the spring of 2020.
TP will be coming in. As they're seeing engage, they find Ruler. He is going to flash away, but for how long? He is actually able to get away from the engage of Cuz. As Cuz will just hop away. Down goes another inhibitor. As from downtown, by the way, he's just going to ult himself just in case. Didn't want to add another death onto this one. 1-1 and 5 looks okay for BDD, at least in the loss.
Yep, and now they're just shredding the turret. Help from all the minions.
There you go, the double knockup. He finds Ruler on the bottom side. Bullabear dies, and that is going to do it. T1 are your LCK Spring 2020 champions in another 3-0 victory in the world. As T1 dominate their opponents, Gen G, it was not close. And they will once again sit on the throne that is the LCK.
It was when we finally thought that Faker, despite still having failed to clutch a Worlds, might have been back to his new form, when T1 fell off again, being a no-show in both the summer of 2020 and the spring of 2021. They had to make serious changes, and they did. By summer of 2021, they were the runner-ups, and by the spring of 2022, they finally won again, going undefeated in the session, something no one else had done in the LCK. And it was against Chovy's new team, Gen G.
They have the heals, they have the resistances, they have the sustain.
And they have a fed LeBlanc with a fed Yumi apparently at this point in the game. They're looking to turn actually. Chovy takes 2 of them out. There's a 3v2 fight on the top side that T1 are getting close on, but it's not quite enough. Gumayusi though is looking to angle over. He might be able to get some damage in. Ruler is in a bit of trouble, has to flash away. The zap gets him on the backside. Gumayusi gets excited, and he's going to be the one that carries the fight in the end. That should be enough for T1, that they will clean up the fight just like that.
And Gen G, you just need to coordinate this.
Let's see what they got. Chovy's just going to go for a face check here as Jinx says bye-bye with the rocket coming in. And now Ruler, he's going to stand up to the Thresh, but he's basically all alone. And the Feathers will not be enough as they will get on top of Ruler. And Doran, with all that mobility, might just barely be able to get alive. But Faker says no, and that will be the end, the ace. So early on in this game, 11,000 owner will be able to pick it up, and that is going to be the end of this. T1 are your spring 2022 victors.
While Chovy hopped from team to team, Faker hunkered down with T1 and his mark. Their paths were divergent, and it seems like Faker's was the right one. Until everything changed. A giant had risen in the LCK that would not just win one title, but win the next 4 titles consecutively, forcing T1 to relinquish themselves to being nothing but the first runner-up in their own region. T1 and Faker were no longer the top dogs in the LCK. It was now Gen G and their new star mid laner, Chovy. Yeah, the very same Gen G that T1 and Faker defeated that very spring. This was when, in my opinion, the rivalry really became interesting. There have always been talks about this person being better than Faker, or that person being more mechanically skilled. But this was the first time we saw it really play out, because Faker just couldn't beat Chovy in lane. Chovy was the laning king after all. But Gen G was a super team filled with some of the best talent in the LCK, and getting effective roams against them was difficult. Chovy locked Faker into a battle of skill and won every single time. Chovy was the best, hands down. And it started with this.
And this Akshan is perma stuck under turret, like you were saying, Chronicler. This is not the reason why you picked this. You're not supposed to be 25 CS behind.
And then while this is happening, there is also no ability.
A clean sweep against the legend Faker. Chovy was the best mid laner in the region, but that alone wasn't enough to wipe out Faker's legacy and inscribe his name into the monuments of the Rift. He had to be the best mid laner in the world. And the first step to that was to win an international title. But in Worlds 2022, Chovy was beaten out by DRX, the 4th seed and Chovy's former team.
Years ago, Death fell to his sister team in Samsung Light, but today, in the face of insurmountable odds, he stands tall. The last dance goes on, the stage is set, it is one final chapter.
However, in the finals, DRX beat T1 as well. In an almost poetic turn of events, both T1 and Gen G lost to the same team. Both T1 and Gen G had to make changes if they planned to become world champions. Though it seemed only Gen G was able to course correct. Faker would lose both the spring and summer splits to Chovy, who continued his reign of dominance in the LCK. They both made it to Worlds though, where T1 went 3-1 in the Swiss stage, losing their one game to Gen G, who, I might add, went undefeated in the Swiss stage.
To work together with T1, and if there's no vision, if there's no choke point control, you just cannot do it against Gen G.
Oh boy, Faker trying his best, but I think Gen Z have their sights on the Nexus as a massive equalizer over the top. Just the cherry on top as Gen G dominate from about 7 minutes onwards to take down this best of one against T1.
It was the LCK again. Maybe it was finally time for Faker to pass on the torch to the new king. However, Gen G would be knocked out by Billy Gaming, one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant team in the LPL. It seems that as skilled as Chovy was against teams from the LCK, he was cursed to always be choky when he stepped on the international stage. All he could do was watch as Faker rose through the ranks and clutched the Summoner's Cup again, raising it high above his head. No one cared if you were the most mechanically skilled or the best in your region. Faker was the world champion, and Chovy was just another what-if. Come 2024, and things seemed different, though, for both teams. T1 was having one of their worst years yet, and Faker was no exception. Suffering from injuries and repeated DDoS attacks going into the spring, there seemed to be nothing they could do to avoid another loss to Gen G. The world champions seemed like champions in title alone, and Faker seemed like he was sitting on a throne that didn't belong to him anymore. Faker would make uncharacteristic mistakes all through the LCK finals, and his mistakes seemed to have weighed heavily on him. He could be seen banging his head against a wall after his loss, and could you blame him? He was constantly being compared to Chovy and seemed completely unable to beat him every time they met. Sure, he was the world champion, but even then, he still lost to Chovy in the one match they played in Worlds. Was his title really his, or was he just lucky that BLG helped him get rid of his kryptonite? And as if that wasn't enough, Faker came down with COVID soon after that. Chovy, on the other hand, had made it through the spring LCK season with the same dominance that had almost become synonymous with his name. Now at MSI, he had his eyes set on one thing: his first international title. Chovy proved dominant here again, but he had to face the team that knocked him out in Worlds, the team that stopped him from facing off against Faker and proving his mettle, BLG. It was hard fought, but Gen G and Chovy managed to win 3-1, marking Chovy's first international title. He was on a high, and Faker was at the lowest point he had been in his whole career. Going into Worlds 2024, there were a lot of favorites, and T1 wasn't one of them. Gen G, however, was. They had just proven that they could be contenders on the world stage with their MSI victory, and Chovy's amazing skills seemed sharper than ever. And as fate would have it, T1 and Gen G would meet in the semifinals in what would be the most viewed non-finals game in LoL history. Gen G managed to clutch an early lead, but T1 came back with a vengeance.
Guys in the brush.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, there's the charm. The crash down as well. It's a dead Gragas. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Despite conceding an early first blood in Game 2, T1 would go on to clutch victory after victory after victory, ending the semifinals 3-1.
They will. Yeah, Nature's Grasp going to come out the arrow, connecting on Tona. Chains of Corruption just try and buy some space with the flash. Onto Faker, the knock-up, and he's dead. Pieces arrows follow him into the death chamber as the Impale is decent. Ona's still alive. He's so tanky, and it's going to be Yushi taking matters into his own hands. The spears go wide, and the coffee goes down. It's a double kill for the Skarner, and Chovy's still alive. There's a bit of damage.
T1 would go on to win another Worlds title that year, despite everything stacked against them. Where Chovy is a player known for choking when he's at perfect form, Faker is known for pulling through when all the chips are stacked against him. He didn't get the title of Unkillable Demon King for no reason. Faker retains his place as the greatest, and Chovy still dominates domestically, and it seems that as long as these two share the rift, the rivalry will never end.